We continue with the manuals, and this time we are going to explore the AMD's manuals. I remind you that we have downloaded two different manuals, which are actually two different volumes. I also remind you that inside Intel's PDF, there are a few volumes together. However, here, every volume is separated. Every volume is its own PDF file. Let's begin with volume number 1, which is this file. It is also known as Application Programming. This volume corresponds to the first volume we have seen inside the Intel's manual. It contains basic explanation about the x86 architecture and some basics of how to use the instructions, or maybe how to write assembly programs. As expected, it contains some overview of the architecture, also explanation about memory, which is called here the memory model, and it also contains a chapter about general purpose programming, which is basically what we have learned in this course. You can see, for example, this picture of all the general purpose registers, and if we keep going, we will see, as expected, the flags register. We can see it here. As opposed to the Intel manuals, AMD's manuals use a different tactic. The first volumes are simplified. For example, here you don't see all the flags inside the flags register. You can see, for example, that it says see volume 2 for system flags. Maybe if you want to use the manuals to learn gradually, then using the AMD's manuals is going to be a better option. Maybe because of this reason. Because of the gradual information that you can see inside the manual. This is about what you can find inside this manual, which is called Application Programming. Volume 1, Application Programming. This volume does not contain a reference of all the instructions. This is something that we are going to find in the other volume. Let's take a look at the other volume now. This was volume number 1. Now we continue with volume number 3. This one is called General Purpose and System Instructions. This manual contains explanation, or maybe even a very detailed explanation of every instruction. Probably as expected, it contains at the first chapters explanation about how to encode instructions. Let's see how it looks like. You can see that this subject is not really simple. It takes some toughness to understand how to encode an instruction. And by the way, you can find exactly the same explanations in the Intel manual. Next, we have some kind of overview of all the instructions. Here you will also find a division of all the instructions to different groups by subject. Finally, the part in which you will spend most of your time is this: General Purpose Instruction Reference. In fact, in this manual, there are two such parts. There is the general purpose instruction reference and system instruction reference. Both contain many instructions. These are general purpose instructions, and these are system instructions. As you can probably see, at this point, you probably don't know any of those instructions, because those are system instructions. Usually, you will not use those instructions. These are general purpose instructions. Most of those instructions are things that you have already seen before. I want to mention that inside this list, you are not going to have all the instructions. You might have been wondering how come here we only have a few instructions and inside the Intel manual we have many more instructions. The answer is simple. You can find the rest of the instructions in the other volumes, which we have not downloaded. We only downloaded volume number 3 and volume number 1. Volume number 3 contains only the simple instructions. There are more advanced instructions which you can find in the other volumes. If you want to get them, it would be a good idea to download the other volumes. Just as with the Intel manual, let's try to look at some instruction. Again, we will look at the add instruction. Let's see how it looks like in this manual. This time, it begins with a textual description, which is here. We have the name of the instruction, add, and a really short description, which says signed or unsigned add. Then we have a longer description. Adds the value in a register or memory location, and an immediate value or the value in a register or memory location, and stores the result in the first operand location. We also have this very simple formulation of how add usually looks like. Then we have this table which we have already seen, which shows different types of textual representation. This is how you are going to write it inside the assembler. Next to it we have the opcode column, which represents the data encoding of every instruction. I remind you that the assembler is going to take this, for example add AL and then some immediate, and convert it into the opcode, which is in this case 4 and then the byte, which is the immediate. We also have a description column, which gives a very short description to every mnemonic. Let's continue. We have here this section called related instructions, which could be very useful. It suggests to look at some other instructions which are somehow related. We already know, for example, that ADC is indeed related to the add instruction. Then we have this table of flags affected. How to read this table? This is some kind of schematic representation of the flags register. We have here the bits number inside the flags register. And in this row, for every flag, we have some kind of a mark that says if the flag is being affected or not affected. As it says here, M means modified, unaffected flags are blank, and undefined flags are U. In this example, we can see that the sign flag, zero flag, auxiliary flag, parity flag, and carry flag are being modified. Also, the overflow flag is being modified. However, for example, the direction flag is unaffected. Next we have the exceptions table. This is the equivalent of the exceptions section which we have seen at the Intel manual. And this is how the add instruction ends. This is the full description of the add instruction. This is about what I wanted to show you in the AMD manuals. There is much more to explore inside this manual and also inside the Intel manual.